Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're looking at how early Rome, which was an exclusively land-based power at the time, managed to conquer the entire Mediterranean by pulling off what is essentially an epic ancient engineering heist. You know, we often picture Rome as this inevitable, unstoppable juggernaut from day one, but the actual truth is way more fascinating. They definitely weren't born masters of the sea. In fact, their entire path to global dominance hinged on this single, audacious moment of rapid adaptation that completely altered human history.
So, you have to ask yourself, how exactly does a rugged, infantry-focused land empire win a brutal, high-stakes war across the open ocean? It's a total David versus Goliath mystery, and that's exactly what we're unraveling today. We're going to examine how Rome's lightning-fast adaptation flipped the script on a wealthy, deeply established maritime superpower. It really proves that sometimes the absolute greatest weapon a nation can possess isn't just a massive army, but the ability to learn and iterate at breakneck speed.
Let's start with Section 1, Mastering the Italian Peninsula, Rome's Early Rise.
To really appreciate this monumental technological leap we're about to get into, we first have to understand Rome's starting position as this relentless, totally grounded military force. Keep in mind, Rome was not even supposed to survive its infancy. Back in 390 BC, northern tribes known as the Gauls marched straight into the city and practically burned the whole thing to the ground. It was a devastating blow. But they didn't collapse. Instead, they literally rebuilt from the ashes and began systematically dominating central Italy. By mastering their infantry tactics and focusing entirely on land warfare, they defeated the Latin League by 338 BC, taking absolute control of the Italian peninsula. They were a land power, through and through.
But here's the real kicker about Rome's strategy, and how they differed from other empires at the time. Their massive growth on land was fueled by their ability to absorb rather than just destroy. You see, while other conquering armies would crush their neighbors and just leave them in absolute ruins, Rome would beat them militarily, but then turn around and offer reasonable terms. Tons of defeated peoples actually became Roman allies, or even full-blown Roman citizens. This massive engine of absorption is what allowed Rome to skyrocket its manpower and unify Italy under its banner.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Carthaginian naval threat, a maritime superpower.
So by the 3rd century BC, Rome is feeling pretty confident. Their ambitions are expanding, but they suddenly bump face to face with a massive problem across the sea. Just look at the stark contrast. On one hand, you have Rome, this rugged land army. On the other hand, you have Carthage. Located over in North Africa, modern-day Tunisia, Carthage was a ridiculously wealthy maritime empire. I mean, they were an absolute powerhouse. They controlled the vital sea routes across the western Mediterranean, plus strategic islands like Sicily and Sardinia. So for a Rome that was just starting to think bigger, Carthage was this massive, intimidating roadblock. Something had to give.
And that tension inevitably snapped in the year 264 BC. These two wildly different empires finally clashed over the island of Sicily, which basically sat right between their spheres of influence. That single spark is what ignited the First Punic War.
But here's where we hit a glaring, almost comical problem for the Romans. Rome barely had a navy. Seriously, they found themselves stepping into this massively escalating conflict with the undisputed masters of the sea while possessing almost zero maritime capabilities of their own. Facing Carthage on the water, with Rome's setup at the time, was literally like bringing a sword to a naval cannon fight.
Let's look at how they solve this in Section 3, Reverse Engineering a Warship, a Technological Pivot.
Faced with this completely impossible disadvantage, Rome executed what has to be one of history's greatest and fastest technological leaps. Instead of capturing a Carthaginian warship and just burning it as a prize, Roman engineers got to work. They systematically dismantled it, piece by piece, to figure out exactly how the thing worked. They used that one single captured vessel as a blueprint to completely reverse engineer the dominant military technology of the era.
And they didn't just build 1 or 2 prototypes to test the waters. Operating with just astonishing industrial speed, Rome built hundreds of them. They took the advanced mechanics they learned from the Carthaginian ship, mass-produced them, and scaled up an entire, state-of-the-art navy practically overnight. It's just a wild testament to Rome's sheer organizational and engineering capacity.
But you know, having the ships is only half the battle, right? Even more astounding than the shipbuilding was the human element. They actually managed to train their crews in a matter of weeks. We are talking about land-bound farmers and foot soldiers who had probably never even seen the open ocean, being rapidly drilled into cohesive, highly effective naval crews.
Moving into Section 4, conquering the Mediterranean, shifting global power.
So let's see how this all builds up to a conclusion that literally shifted the balance of global power forever. This newly minted fleet allowed Rome to finally take the fight to the sea. But I don't want to paint this as a quick, easy victory. Not at all. It was a grueling, incredibly bloody war that dragged on for 23 long years. It pushed Rome's reverse-engineered navy, their economy, and frankly, the sheer willpower of their citizens to the absolute limit.
Yep, in the end, against all logical odds, Rome's improvised navy pulled it off. After over 2 decades of brutal fighting, Carthage was forced into submission. They had to pay Rome a massive financial penalty, and they were forced to surrender their strategic Mediterranean island territories. Rome had essentially snatched control of the seas right out of the hands of the civilization that defined maritime dominance.
And you know, that initial spark of engineering genius, it set off a saga that spanned an entire century. After that first war, the conflict flared up again. In 218 BC, you have the brilliant Carthaginian general Hannibal famously crossing the Alps with war elephants. But Rome did what they do best. They learned and they adapted again, leading to Scipio Africanus winning the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. Finally, in 146 BC, this all culminated in a third war that ended with the total, utter destruction of Carthage. The city was literally burned to the ground.
Which leaves us with this definitive historical summation. Rome's only real rival in the Western world is gone. By completely eliminating their greatest maritime threat through this unmatched process of adaptation and pure endurance, this former little hilltop settlement on the banks of the Tiber River transformed itself into the undisputed, most powerful force on planet Earth.
So, what does this mean for us? It really leaves you wondering, how can that Roman superpower of rapid learning and fearless iteration help us tackle the monumental challenges in our own lives today? Think about it. If a society of farmers and foot soldiers could dismantle what was essentially alien technology to them, copy it, and use it to conquer the seas in mere weeks, just imagine what barriers you can overcome when you fully commit to adapting to the unknown. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope you leave today feeling ready to conquer whatever vast oceans stand in your way.